I'm Anna Siefkin. I'm the Associate Director for Innovation and Strategic Partnerships for the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation. We are very glad to have you here for this lunchtime lecture. I am not doing the formal introduction today, but I am here for a bit of housekeeping. In front of you on the table, you'll actually see a note about a website that we're using to collect questions. So if you have a question for for either our speaker or our moderator, you can certainly put that information. You put slido.com into your browser. You put in the code #CMU Energy, which is the same as all of our social media in the case you're doing that today. And the questions will come to the moderator on stage. So with that, I'd like to introduce Christine Mondor. She is a CMU alum, a CMU adjunct professor, and she's also the principal and co-founder of Evolve EA, which is an architecture and planning firm here in Pittsburgh. Thank you, Christine.
Thanks, Anna. So I have the pleasure today of introducing the CEO of Philips Lighting, Chris White, and come on out. If I can tell you a little bit about Chris. Exactly. Look, I lift up the thing and out he comes. Chris White is the fairly recently named president of the Americas for Philips Lighting, and he's responsible for accelerating the company's leadership position and expanding the role of the region as a critical hub of economic growth and innovation. If I understand correctly, you manage all commercial and operational activities across the company's entire portfolio, from conventional and LED products to connected systems and services, and to advance the success of Philips in North, South, and Central America, big region. It is. You are a recognized thought leader on the positive disruptive effects on the increasingly digital and connected world. Chris has done a TED talk online, I recommend. And he brings a unique perspective to the Internet of Things, which is helping the company further expand its connected lighting offerings. Chris has held a number of transformative executive roles throughout his career. Prior to joining Philips Lighting, he was a 20-year veteran of Cisco, where he held various leadership roles, including Senior Vice President of Global Sales Strategy and Go-to-Market. The Internet of Things, where he spearheaded Cisco's market influence and leadership in IoT. And before that, he was the general manager of the Sports and Entertainment Group, which under his leadership grew from a $20 million company to a $500 million business in less than 5 years. So with that, let's hear from Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon, and great to see everybody. It's an amazing experience to be here at Carnegie Mellon. Thank you for that great introduction. It's always, as I hear your bio, I'm like, is that really me? I'm like, so hopefully I can live up to that expectation. So in the next 15 minutes, my objective is to hopefully change your perspective of light. And one kind of corny way I could do it is turn the lights off and do this presentation in the dark and share the value of light, but I think you all get that. But light and the whole lighting industry is going through yet another amazing transformational journey. A lot of people get the fact that old incandescent lighting that Philips has been a pioneer and innovator for over 120 years in has gone through its first major transition going to LED lights. And most of us see the value and understand what LEDs can do for us from a longevity perspective and a quality of light. However, now that entire ecosystem is being connected. And for someone that has been in the industry and the world of IoT for the last couple of years, some of you probably know some of the predictions already. We all feel fairly connected to the internet today. However, the predictions are 20 billion, 50 billion, maybe 200 billion things are being connected to the internet over the next 3 to 5 years. And on the one hand, that sounds crazy amazing, and that, is that even possible? But then every day in taxi cabs around the world and conversations over dinner, my son has a connected basketball. My father-in-law has connected hearing aids. We all have connected thermostats. Many of you hopefully have connected lighting at your home through our Success in the Consumer channel with the Hue product, which is the #1 connected product around Alexa as an example, so voice-activated lighting. But I want to give you a lighting tour here of the lighting world as it is today. I want to share with you some of the innovation of the future. And I do want to achieve two things. One, get you thinking differently about light. But I also would challenge you all to start acting differently about light. Because if we're really going to all take advantage of this thing called IoT or digitization or connected lighting, we've got to do certain things a little differently. And as you go through this presentation and as we get into the Q&A, hopefully you'll kind of be thinking about that and, as we turn this into a discussion, not just a one-way conversation. But a couple of data points, right? Light, it's an interesting dilemma. So light is a major consumption of power around the world, probably the largest. 18% of the world's energy is consumed through light sources. So there's a huge amount of pressure to reduce the amount of energy that light consumes, yet there is exponential demand for light, right? So the predictions is as the population of this planet grows, there's actually one sobering data point, there's 1.2 billion people that don't have access to regular energy or light sources. So there's a huge demand just there, but as the whole world urbanizes, we're looking at more and more light sources hitting the world. So therefore, thinking through the energy implications, the social implications, the building implications are not to be underestimated. This is a little bit of, I'm an ex-Brit, I'm an ex-Californian, I'm moving to the East Coast with Phillip's Lighting. This, I don't know, anyone recognize where that bridge is around the world? Any Californians in the room? Bay Bridge, thank you. That is the Bay Bridge that got lit up, actually, interestingly enough, through my background with a Cisco data center and a Phillip's Lighting infrastructure. On the one hand, got phenomenal recognition, great lighting up another iconic tourist place. But also there was a little bit of anxiety in that community as well. You know, there's homeless people in San Francisco. There are some urban issues in San Francisco. Should you be investing in a tourist area? So what we did was partner with the city and actually SAP and have come up with a social media tracking device on this device. So the city can actually see how many tweets, Instagram, social media images or activations are used both in a positive light and a negative light. Are people tweeting that says, what a waste of money and this is terrible? Or are they taking photos saying, oh my God, what a beautiful icon, I'm going to come back to San Francisco? And thank goodness the positive feedback has been very good, and they're using that as a way to help understand how they can connect with the community, understand what tourism needs are for the future. But it's just an example of the idea of just lighting a structure up is pretty cool. Understanding what impact it has on society or a community, let alone the economics of a community, hopefully is even more impactful and better. To get you a little excited and hopefully to let lunch digest a little bit, I want to share with you a little bit of a video. We're so excited at this digital transformation, we're actually going to change the name of our company next month. And this is a bit of a teaser on that with regard to, if I can get the video, okay, she told me, that's it. The wiggle the finger. No, I got that. I missed the wiggle the finger piece. I got it. Okay, so hopefully the audio will come through. I just want to play this very short video that will share with you a little bit of what the transformation is all about. One more time? Come on, I can do this. Wiggle your finger, press the play button. That's what I did. Thank you. Thank you. It was the Phillips people in the room that started clapping first, by the way. So it was, and just to clarify what that means, we're actually keeping our brand names. We're actually using the Phillips brand in certain areas still, but from a company perspective, Philips Lighting spun off from Royal Philips. Almost its 2-year anniversary is coming up next month as an example. So we're the largest publicly traded lighting company in the world today. We've got a very 5% spend and investment on R&D. We believe the combination of innovation in lighting and combining that with the value and impact of connected lighting has tremendous impact on this world and in business in general. Hence the name change, which will become official next month after it goes through a little bit of European legislative issues. So let's talk about why our world is changing. And I think some of this is no surprise at all to this great audience here. Obviously, population growth means people need more light. There is also, though, a challenge of how much that resource is consuming. Therefore, how can you make it even more efficient and energy efficient and use less of the resources that are out there to make sure this planet keeps going? But then also there's the idea of what does digital innovation do to that? As things digitally go from analog to digital, I think we all know the rate of change changes dramatically. It's not just a linear change, it's an exponential change. And sometimes we all have trouble getting our heads around, probably not with this esteemed audience, but I do, thinking about how do you think and act exponentially? How do you plan for exponential change? Our architects, our design people, our buildings, our set, beautiful building just down the road is a multi-year process. By the time that building starts compared to when people walk into that building, the technology has changed dramatically. So how do we think differently and architect differently and collaborate differently to take advantage of that? I wanted to give you a few examples of that. Obviously, the population growth and urbanization with cities is putting a lot of pressure on city infrastructure. How could light and the light infrastructure help transform that? I know we have the mayor of San Juan here. I just had a meeting with her this morning. Phenomenal passion and desire to help get that community and that country out of the tough times it had after the hurricane. But she's also thinking through as a thought leader of how do you take advantage of that and put in a digital infrastructure? How do you put in a connected infrastructure that if that terrible accident happens again, how do you get back online quicker? How do you get lighting to communities quicker? How do you get power to communities quicker? How do you get food connected? So this whole idea of connecting communities that typically operate in silos is a great area. What we're excited about is think of the light infrastructure both inside a building and outside the building. I spent 20 years at a networking company that was pretty proud of plumbing the internet and putting together the first generation of the internet and the great impact that had. Think now of the next generation, whether you call it IoT or digitization, the need for connecting the world. With 5G technology that the telcos and some people are excited about, I know some people are a little nervous about that, 5G as an example needs 10 times the density of cell towers than the current cellular technology. So think about the impact that might have on a beautiful campus like this. Do you want to see 10 times the amount of ugly cell towers designed as poor imitations of plastic trees around this campus as an example? And what we've tried to do is innovate and partner with other private entities, and we've announced a partnership with this company called ATC, American Tower Corporation. American Tower Corporation, their last business model was designing those ugly towers, but typically they're in areas that not many people see. We've now designed a light pole that actually can be beautifully architecturally designed, but you can open that light bulb up and put 5G antennas or low-band IoT internet towers or Wi-Fi antennas into the structure and therefore cover the area without impacting the community, etc. The efficiency side obviously is doing. Philips ourselves, we have shipped 2 billion LED light sources already. And that's made a difference, but then there are certain consumption issues or infrastructure issues that how do you keep going? And how do you actually get to that next generation of what connecting light can really be all about? And how do you make an even bigger impact with that? So I wanted to kind of share with you some examples of what digital innovation is already happening. And I want to finish on hopefully stretching your thoughts about future waves of innovation that candidly we haven't even figured out how to implement and benefit from yet. So let's start at the home. Anyone here have a connected lighting system in their home today? A few early adopters in the room. That's good to hear, right? And the idea of connected lighting and connected home, right? It's not actually new, right? The smart home has been talked about for decades, right? Sony and Panasonics of this world, a couple of decades ago got all excited about it, and technology wasn't together. Then the home networking market that I was a part of a couple of years ago got all excited about it. But now, with things like Alexa and Nest's thermostat and connected lighting, it's becoming a reality. You can actually use your cell phone device to control your home. And I want to kind of stretch your thinking a little bit, because some people in the audience are probably sitting there saying, seriously, you need a connected light bulb? You can't get up and turn the light switch on and off? But there are multiple benefits of a connected lighting system in the home. One actually is safety and security. If you think about it, right, how many people have tried that gorgeous system of getting one of those timers in your wall and putting a thing when you go on vacation, right? I got a news flash, right? The criminal world has figured out, if they sit outside your house for 2 days in a row and that light bulb just goes on and off, you're not home, right? So the idea with a connected system is, why not mimic it the way you live in that home? So set a pattern that says, when I come home, the lights in the kitchen go on because I'm making dinner. Then I'm going to go to the front room and watch TV for an hour, and then that light's going to go off, and then I'm going to the bedroom for half an hour, and I'm in bed. And it gives the impression of a more secure, livable room. Think about any one of us that have elderly parents. If you could help control the lighting environment so as it gets dark, you can turn the lights on for your elderly relations and improve the environment they live in. The idea of this has gone into the hospitality area, right? Anyone that travels around the world, one of the worst things is to get up in the middle of the night, hit the light switch, and be blinded and woken up when you're trying to just survive through the night and get as much sleep as possible. Well, certain new hotels are putting sensors in the room now, so as you get up, a dull light comes on, you can go to the bathroom, you can turn the lights, air conditioning up or down, you go back to bed and relax. So the spectrum is huge. The other end, for any entertainment, any sort of Netflix junkies, any movie buffs in the room? So we demonstrated at CES where this can connect to your entertainment system. So the idea is, pick your favorite movie. You're going to watch a movie, right? You dull the lights. Most people now have got these beautiful TVs with surround sound systems. What if the lighting system interacted with that movie? What if, we demonstrated this with Wonder Woman, right? You're sitting in a dark room watching a movie. As an explosion goes off, all your lights go on as well. The immersive experience is incredible. Any music people, if you're listening to your favorite band in a concert, the light show in your house is exactly the same as what is going on in stage. So there's these two huge extremes. There's a very pragmatic, practical example, and then there's this very inspirational, immersive entertainment value. But let's bring it back into the business world and into buildings like this. This is Deloitte's corporate headquarters in the Benelux, actually, and talks about a connected lighting system. But they didn't just connect the light system, they gave every employee an app to be able to control that system. So you can control the lighting or in the environment, and this has proved to be one of the most sustainable buildings in Europe. It's also proved to be one of the most efficient buildings in Europe, and people like the environment because you can adjust the lighting to increase the energy level and increase the productivity of people in that area. City of LA went to a connected lighting system, have seen a 10% reduction in crime. Because guess what? Crime happens in dark, unsecure neighborhoods. So if you can increase the lighting area in the cities, things improve. Huntington Beach is an early pioneer. This is one of those light poles that I talked about before, right? Embedded in that light bulb is a 5G antenna, a Wi-Fi antenna, a shot detection antenna, an environmental antenna to create a better environment in a community. To finish on a little bit, to think a little bit different and some of the future technologies. So solar-powered light, we've worked with areas in India, in some of the light-starved villages so kids can do their homework at night. We've actually worked down in South America to provide light to stadiums so kids can play soccer in the evenings. There's this great technology we just showed last week at Light and Build, or 2 weeks ago, called Li-Fi. Li-Fi uses the power of light to distribute the internet. At the moment, it's being demonstrated at a 30 to 40 megabyte pace. So the idea of that light source delivers Wi-Fi and data to that table. It doesn't distribute it everywhere. So it's very secure, it's very focused. Future technologies on infrared say that could be up to 3 gigabits type of transmission. But also, with this lighting infrastructure, you should be able to tell how many people are in this room, what they're doing, link in with the infrastructure to adjust the air conditioning. As a retailer, you can figure out where you are in the store and deliver 30-centimeter location accuracy using light versus other technologies. And then the other thing we've got to do, where I'll finish on, is we have to feed this world. So light sources and the way we use horticultural lighting to make things grow as efficiently and as effectively as possible, hopefully allows us to feed the world as well. So in that lightning session there, I know we want to turn this into an interactive session, so I'll come join you on the couch. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you do think of lighting a little bit differently, and I'll come join you. Where do you want to sit? Right here?
Okay, see?
Great.
Great. All right, well, let's give him a hand first.
Great. Thank you.
So I get to pick your brain a little bit, and so I'm going to ask you.
There's not much there, so be careful. It should be a short session.
Okay, that's great. We're done. I am going to ask you some questions about how Phillips is thinking about these things, not just from a product aspect, but also from how you do business.
Yep.
Connect it back to how the university connects, and then talk about kind of how this scales in the future. So first, we've heard some interesting ideas about change models. In the past presentations yesterday and the day before, I'd say if I had to paraphrase how people talked about it, some people talked about their companies as kind of virtuous innovators. Yep. Other ones are profit-driven implementers. Crisis disruption is another model of change. Code-driven change. There's a number of different ways that companies are thinking about, or researchers are thinking about how their offerings are going to be taken up in the market. Where does Phillips fit in this continuum, and how do you all think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually I think it's the right question too, because being a publicly traded company now, there are certain pressures on you to deliver results and continue to be successful. But hopefully that doesn't distract you from your core values and your core focus. Mm-hmm. And one of Philips Lighting's core values and focus is innovation in lighting and the benefit of lighting. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually pretty proud, and I've only been here 90 days type thing, but the balance seems to be a very good one. And hopefully the pressure of being a private sector company can put the right sort of pressure on the innovation engine. Mm-hmm. Because more and more that innovation needs to be aligned with the needs of a community or the business, otherwise it's not commercially viable.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully we've got a pretty good balance on that. We don't want to just innovate for innovation's sake. Yeah. But we're trying to make sure it's a benefit to the planet and the commercial side as well as the educational side.
So if your change model is connected to both community and to product innovation and to profit, obviously, as well. How is that happening internal? And I'll say one of the great things about Carnegie Mellon is that we have people from all different disciplines. I'm an architect and designer and thinking about how people make urban environments. But I was talking to one of my colleagues 10 years ago who was working in materials science, and she's talking about boy, we need to get to this point before these cool things she's doing, which eventually led to LED, yep. Just weren't there yet. And so we recognized there was a gap between where we were here. Phillips is kind of the organization right now that's filling that gap, right, between material science and implementation. Who is on the team in Phillips? What kind of thinking are you doing? How is this different than your traditional model of doing business? Because you're selling your bulbs in a computer store, not in a hardware store.
Yep, so. Yep. No, boy, there's multi-dimensions to that question, and it's a great one. I think one, if you look at the internal side of a company like Philips, we now have multiple layers of where we both innovate and interact with the market. Mm-hmm. And this is why I love doing events like this, right? The challenge to think differently and keep up to date with amazing institutes like this as far as how much outreach they want to do, how much private partnerships do you want to really roll your sleeves up in doing. But with regard to Philips, though, we have a chief innovation officer that is looking a little further out, looking all around the world, in China, in India, in the U.S., in Europe, to figure out what are some of the new technologies and disruptive factors that are happening, whether it be in lighting innovation or chip innovation or artificial intelligence or robotic implementation, right? Those are colliding. When it comes to a regional basis, we try and roll our sleeves up with both customers, education, and again, an innovation engine, whether it be the startup community that got very well profiled here this week, and make sure we're not missing anything. And so the multi-dimensions now, we want to make sure we're not so proud of our heritage in innovation that we get stuck into the good old not invented here syndrome. But then, you know, it's a very, very, very careful balance, actually, I think, nowadays. But what I've comfortable with, and one of the reasons I joined the company is I like the idea of, you know, let's stick to our knitting, so to speak, and realize there's so much innovation going on in lighting and disruption going on there. And then let's not be naive to what digital disruption does. So therefore, as an example, we've launched an IoT platform with open APIs to other people so they can, you know, plug into that community. And both, by the way, on the corporate side as well as the home side. So we have a whole developer community called Friends of Hue that can come up with cool applications to use lighting that, you know, we would never have come up with without that ecosystem and community.
Yeah, so you really need to create that ecosystem to support your product, which is so much more complex than when it was just providing lighting.
It is, and I want to bring up one other point because I think it's a very valid one, right? You know, lighting in a computing store, and one of our challenges as we move digitally is the consumption of lighting at the moment, because historically we typically would have gone to, you know, a major building supplier or you know, or standard electrical play, and all of a sudden it does need to be in a computerized environment. Take that into the business world and your background of design and architecture, right? It's like, okay, how do we talk differently to the architectural community and the design community to think differently about, you know, it's not just, you know, 6,000 light points in this room, right? What could you do with, you know, 8,000 connected ones that understand how it's linked to the heating system or the tracking system to get more efficiency and a better experience in a room like this?
Sure. So I think you did a great job actually of connecting to the urban environment. You know, we're not talking about just the technology, we're talking about the role of it within the environment. And another one of our assets here at CMU, Joel Tarr, has done studies on how lighting changed the way we behave in cities when we first got electrification. So that's a big difference. What do you see as the future? What's different in a city, not just visually, but performatively, because we're implementing new technologies?
Yeah, and there's multiple layers to that. And I think one of the things you just alluded to, and we've done some of our own research and partnered with some educational establishments around the world to understand the impact of light on our lives. And you know, as an ex-Northern European that has the benefit of living in California for the last couple of years, I can just tell you personally, right? You know, you wake up in dreary, wet old England and
it's never like that here. It's never like that here.
It's a nice day today. Yeah. I enjoyed my drive here this morning.
Always like that.
But you know, contrast that to being, you know, vitamin D overdosed in California. You know, you wake up with an energy, right? So think about, to your point, okay, if you don't have the benefit of good old California weather, how can you use light to change that environment? And literally, we've done studies, and now some of our connected lighting will literally do that, right? So, and we're actually trying to figure out what the transition from getting up in the morning all the way to going to work is. So our Hue system has been designed to be bright and energizing when you wake up, to be relaxing when you come in, but to be intense enough if you want to read a good book. Take that into the business world for a minute, or the educational world for that matter. You know, we're probably all drinking a little too much caffeine nowadays to try and keep that energy going. Well, what about using light to stimulate and keep your brain and the you know, endorphins moving in the right direction? So, and I think that just moves into the community as well, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of connected lighting in a city has multiple effects. One, bring light to impoverished areas. Bring light efficiency by being able to control those lights, but don't do it at the expense of the experience. We had Cardiff City, a small city in South Wales, the capital actually, at our leadership conference a couple of weeks ago, and the gentleman was fantastic because he talked about the benefit of a connected light system that even he didn't understand. So the idea is we're trying to conserve energy, but if there's an accident, can you give police access to that system to turn up the lights, to bring safety in, get people out, get the thing cleared up, and then drop it down again. You know, if you're at a restaurant, having a nice dinner on your anniversary, you don't want a light just going in there. So they've given retail establishments access to the lighting, so they can dull it during their peak hours, but then when they want to get everyone home safely, they turn it up brightly again and people get out of that city. So I think there's really interesting sort of community benefits and impacts. And the one final one I'll talk about, which I didn't even think about, is the benefit of light to the deaf and blind community. People in Cardiff go down the pub and have a drink. If they're using sign language, they can communicate in an environment like that. As soon as they walk out and there's bad light, they can't.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, blind people, they don't need light, but their guide dogs need light to be safe to take them home. So it was just a fascinating example of what connected lighting has multiple benefits in a community.
So that makes me think about how important it is here in the university that we already do a good job working across units. And I'm reminded that our colleagues that came up just before this presentation were from the humanities. And you heard more than once that part of their role is understanding how this is situated in the cultural, ethical matrix of things. We're technological optimists. You're a technological optimist. What concerns or worries or challenges do you think we have with, as we're so optimistic about adopting new technologies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just having this conversation on the walk over, actually, because I class myself as a digital optimist. I'll put an unplugged plug in for a gentleman that I don't know that well, but Peter Diamandis wrote this book, Abundance. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called The Future is Brighter Than You Think. Nothing to do with lighting at all, by the way.
Why you like it.
But it just talks about digital adoption solving some of these things we worry about. So I think digital optimists shouldn't be naive to digital implementation. Because if there's one thing that does slow the benefits of digital, it is the adoption. And again, I'll pick on your background because you know it very well, right? You know, the design and build infrastructure business runs with a certain cadence and a certain dynamic. We touched on before this about, if someone's building this and you guys say, okay, I need 100 lights in this light bulb, there's pressure on that building project to do it at the most cost-effective area. So if you're not careful, the value of connected lighting suddenly goes out the window. We also talked about a little bit of the challenges of some of these low-cost imports coming in, and are they really delivering the value that people think? As consumers, we're very price conscious. You could argue that's what made Walmart so successful, right? The best product, the right price, in the right location. But you've got to be careful, is the value really in that? My father-in-law, before I even joined Phillips Lighting, offered to upgrade my lighting system at my home and in my landscaping, and I was thrilled. God bless him, he got online, he did all this research, all these boxes started showing up, did the whole thing. Less than a year later, 50% of those lights don't work.
Yep.
So thinking through that whole value proposition, I think, so the implementation side and really understanding the value, and therefore the idea of collaborating across silos is something that should not be underestimated. That is easier said than done.
Absolutely agree. So we now have time for questions from the audience, and I know that you can text them in. The instructions are on your tabletop, so you open up a website and then you just ask your questions. And Anna, you've been monitoring those questions. What do you want to throw our way?
We have a lot of questions coming our way,
great.
just so that you know. And I want to apologize in advance. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but wanted to let you know that. So a question about privacy. So does the idea of connectivity also push the idea of increased protection of privacy? And how are innovative companies like Philips thinking about this issue?
A very excellent topic and fairly topical in the news this week with Mr. Zuckerberg and what Facebook are doing. And it's interesting, I had a whiteboard session with the mayor of San Juan this morning, and she just passionately was drawing up what she needs from a new infrastructure. And two parts of the conversation which I thought were fascinating was, one, how do we make it all digital? But then the immediate follow-on question needs to be, how do you make it securely digital? And if we're not careful, we are putting digital solutions all over the place, and security is a little bit of an afterthought, and we don't really stress test the security of those. So one, it's security as a fundamental, and two, candidly, I think digital optimists shouldn't get carried away with themselves. They've got to understand the community that they're talking to and addressing, and privacy, security concerns, they're real issues. But I think we've got to create the right balance. The analogy I always use is, people used to walk in front of the automobile with a flag slowing it down as well, right? We eventually got comfortable with the automobile and decided to put speed limits on freeways. So there's sort of an adoption process we need to think through. I know you've got a lot of questions, so I'll try and make the answers quicker.
So I know that you and the mayor of San Juan talked about Li-Fi, which shows a lot of promise. So does Philips have plans to work with the device market, laptops and phones, to integrate Li-Fi hardware in their products?
I think the quick answer is yes. And obviously we're excited about the future opportunity. We also feel you've got to be careful with some of these new technologies. They're not a panacea to every connectivity issue. What you're seeing now with Li-Fi, with next generation Wi-Fi, narrowband, IoT, Bluetooth, Zigbee, there's multiple connectivity options now. So you've got to just think through where is that best suited to the best use case.
Next question. Can you talk about energy for enabling the computing? This person is worried that all of the energy gains that we've gotten from switching to LEDs would get lost in the race to remain connected.
That's an excellent question, and I think this is where not just the design community, but the user community, the people that operate these things, need to be thinking it through. However, even with LED technology, we haven't really implemented a tremendous amount of sensor technology. So, even LEDs can get left on. And so I think the combination of a correctly architected digital environment with the right amount of sensors can hopefully stay ahead of that curve.
Great. So, next question. As the developing world grows, what are the challenges Philips sees in the future of the lighting industry?
Boy, that's a good one. Challenges in the lighting industry specifically. One, lighting, like many industries, always has a pressure of commoditization. And I touched on it earlier, right? The low pressure point of cost, you've got to think through not cost but value. So on the one hand, we are committed to the lamp business, the LED business. We're going to be in the lighting business for a long time. But we also recognize, in fact, we made an announcement just two weeks ago that our entire product line will be either connected or connectable within the next 3 to 5 years. So we believe the connected side is going to help us with the commodity side because of all the benefits we've talked about.
You mentioned that you are devoting 5% towards R&D. So how much of a commitment do you have with venture funding?
We don't actually publicly announce that, and actually the good news is it's a growing number, and as a public company, I think we're noticing, and conferences like this are great examples of realizing that startup community can help us move faster and cover more bases. So now we've got an active acquisition strategy, partnership strategy. I mentioned American Towers. We actually have a partnership with my old company, Cisco. We're going to be announcing a number of other companies. So you touched on this ecosystem play. I think the good news is Philips is pretty grounded in realizing we're going to do lighting and connected lighting very well, but it is going to take a proverbial village to deliver all these benefits.
So related to that, what would you like to see as signifies unique innovation 50 years from now?
Oh.
Hard questions.
It's a great question. It's a really thought-provoking question. When people ask me questions like that, I actually have a sort of an immediate pragmatic swing back to if we could just deliver what we're all talking about, that makes this world incredibly safe, incredibly connected. Hopefully, we can feed everyone, we can educate everyone. And so I don't think there's any magic bullet behind that. I think if we can just roll our sleeves up and get on and do some of the stuff that's already done, we could see fantastic, we don't have to wait 50 years for the benefit, we can get on with it.
So are you seeing an impact between light frequencies and health and motivational feeling?
So the quick answer is yes, and I touched on it before. There is definitely, well, it depends what the question is. So light frequencies and the impact of light. Obviously how you use light, right? If we dulled this light down after lunch, it's probably not the best strategy from a meeting perspective. So trying to increase the light gradually, that doesn't scare us either. So there's definitely, and we're trying to figure out, again, how we work with the design community, the operating community to make that a reality. You can do it today, but we don't have the how many people have been in a meeting room with this beautiful, there's one right over there, right? Gorgeous control panel on the wall to do all these cool things. And it reminds me back, and I'll share my age here a little bit. It's good old VCR days, right? There's a VCR sitting on your TV, and the light's flashing because no one knows how to program the damn little clock. I guarantee there's probably more power in that panel than in the space shuttle in Apollo 13. But can someone come in and help us use it, type thing, right? So we've got to make it. I give Apple a lot of credit. That's why I'm a big fan of Apple's. No user manual, an app that makes it work. Hopefully we can adopt it and use the benefits more.
Anna, maybe I can just ask a question that I've had is what concerns do you have about the sunsetting of operating systems and being able to, if I switch my phone, if I switch my software, and I've got all my hardware connected to that, how do you future-proof against that?
It's a great question. I'm not sure I have the right answer, and I hope, especially my old tech industry, gets better and better at that, because on the one hand, it's easy for tech companies to go do it. In fact, there's a great one line. It's like, why was God ever able to build the world in 7 days?
Oh, yeah.
Because there was no infrastructure to upgrade. And it was, and I think tech companies kind of cheat a little bit to say, oh, forget that infrastructure, go with a new one, right? So I know we're getting a hook a little bit. Do you have one last question?
Just one last question.
Is that from you, though?
We have students in the room, so give us a couple of last thoughts for our students, your future employees. Tell us what you'd like for us to know.
Yeah, come join us and help, I think, is the quickest one. But in all seriousness,
That was a job offer.
No, hey, it's we need bright, smart minds. I just had a meeting down in Argentina with some of our early in career people, and my goodness, the passion, the energy, the openness to adopting future things versus, candidly, a lot of companies are like, well, we couldn't do that. We haven't done that for 100. We've done this the same way for 100 years. So, one, I think it's that. Two, think about the application of whatever you're studying and doing into whatever you're passionate about. The private sector, the public sector, philanthropic areas. Whether you're into engineering, computer science, humanities. Think about all the good stuff you learn. How can you take that out and make an impact? And don't let the company, including a Phillips, suck that out of you and try and make you conform to the good old ways that it got done. We need bright, motivated people to help change the world and adopt this technology faster than we do it the normal way.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really good to talk.
Thank you.